How's it going, crypto community and XRP Martians alike? You're now tuned in the Jade Martian, and we are going to be listening to Christine Lagarde discuss the current state of the U.S. economy in her annual review. Now, real quick before we jump into this, I'm going to just throw my regular plug out there. So if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, please smash that subscribe button. If you enjoy content XRP related, be sure to not only hit that like, but to ring that bell so that you can stay up to date on all content XRP related that I share. So, without any further ado, let's just jump straight into this interview with Christine Lagarde so that we can start talking about how our world is just on the brink, the very brink of a massive shift. Alright, can't wait.
So, thank you, Jerry, and good morning to all of you. Let me just start by remembering that today is June the 6th. On June the 6th, 2019, there's a lot that the Americans can be proud of, and not just because of their illustrious past for having led that journey to freedom that liberated most of Europe and which is being celebrated today on its 75th anniversary, but clearly also for leading this unbelievable multilateral effort that took the life of so many and brought life and light to so many others. Now, I'm saying that because, obviously, in addition to that, the Americans can be very proud of the economy as it stands today. In a matter of a few weeks, the US economy will be in the longest expansion in recorded history. And this is an important achievement that is driven by a robust private sector demand and by policy choices that have helped spur growth and job creation. Speaking of jobs, unemployment is at levels not seen since the late 60s. And wages and households' incomes are rising as well. And this is happening at a time when inflation pressures in the US remains very subdued. Our assessment is that the economy will grow this year at about 2.6% and next year at around 2%. And this represents an increase from our initial growth forecast by 0.3%.
So, before she jumps in and says, but here, that sounds pretty good, right? Hey, everything's going up, employment's up, average wages are up, everything's up, right? Everything's good, everything's hunky-dory. So why did I pause before her but? Because I wanted to remind everybody that typically when people speak, everything before but is BS. So, pay attention.
So, lots of positives and a lot to be proud of on the economic front, and the economic indicators are saying so. But if we look at a few other indicators which actually matter, the social indicators, there is a lot of room for improvement. We see a challenging picture. Average life expectancy has trended downwards in recent years. Income and wealth polarization have increased. Social mobility has steadily eroded. Education and health outcomes are suboptimal. And while the poverty rate is falling, it remains higher than in any other advanced economies. So we believe that more attention should be paid to promoting inclusive and sustainable growth. More attention should be paid to social outcomes.
So before she runs into her solutions, the rest of her solutions, let's just touch on everything she said, right? So she started off by saying that the average household incomes are up, right, in America. Yet then she says that the divide, the polarization between the wealthy and the poor has only increased. She then also says that that there are more jobs than ever. Yet societal advancement or societal migration, whatever term she used, essentially, you moving from poverty to middle class to upper class, that has also gone down. So even though the average wages are going up, the average person is stuck in a rut. How does that work? Well, it's because we're using average and not median, right? In averages, you're adding all the billionaires who are considered Americans into that total, and all the money they've earned into that total. And that money they have is averaged across all of us in the rest of the country. Now, there are more jobs because the economy has moved over to what's called a gig economy, right? That means that, as many of you who out there are working gig jobs know, you are no longer on a the traditional 9 to 5. You work as work becomes available to you, and you're paid for that work, not for not like an actual salary, or oftentimes they're not even hourly wages. They're just project based, depending on what you're doing, right? So it's very important to keep in mind that the figures that she just gave and the facts that she just fed you, and how those facts translate in the real world, right? What does her words mean? Because if you're just listening through, nonchalantly, you're just gonna hear her contradicting herself, right? So it's really important to I guess try to have a more open mind, I guess, to what her words are implying, and why she's describing the system in the way she is, as opposed to just being like, yeah, so exactly what I said, right? Like layman's terms. And it's by and large because if she spoke normally, what she is saying would probably cause riots, because it's, or worse. Who knows? But let's jump back into this.
Come into line with the macroeconomic very good developments that we see. And there are policies that can actually achieve that. There are many policies, and we've mentioned them over the course of our previous Article 4 reviews. So I will mention a few of those which we believe would actually rally the support of many. Instituting paid family leave comes to mind. Expanding the very effective earned income tax credit that the world envies the United States. Helping working family with child and dependent care. All of this would provide a lifeline to families and help support social mobility by making it easier for them to enter the workforce and pursue a fulfilling career. And speaking of life expectancy, we would like to highlight the important work that is underway by the federal, state, and municipal governments across the country to tackle the current opioid crisis in the US. The human costs of this epidemic are tragic, and while we know that there is no easy solution, it is rightly a bipartisan priority of the administration and of Congress.
So, unfortunately, though I'd like to touch upon that, I don't want to, just because I don't want to get too political on you guys. But to be clear about my opinion on why this opioid epidemic is going on, it's because of what we just touched upon in the previous, right? In my opinion, and this is just mine, and you can shoot it down however you like, the opioid epidemic is fueled by and large by most Americans just being miserable, because most feel that the American dream has died. And that's for a society, for a societal dream to die is a dangerous thing, because it starves a populace of hope, And when you lose hope is when you become you become the least human when you lose hope. Because once you've lost hope, you know, you're consumed by negative emotions. You're either consumed by depression and sadness, or you're consumed by anger and hatred. You know, you either assume you're the victim, or you say the world deserves to burn. And that's what you become when you lose hope. And that's what drives a lot of people to, searching for themselves a lot of times, even through drugs, through opioids, trying to numb the pain, whatever it is, whatever their excuse, you can absolutely root it back to they're in a bad place in life, and that's why they're abusing this thing, whatever the opioid is. Now, that's just my opinion, and I'm really just interjecting it to break up the dialogue because this little bit's not really important to us as crypto holders, but it is important to keep in mind because this is the world that those of you who dedicate to this platform, to this network, to this digital revolution, it's going to be in at least a handful of your power to maybe correct these things, to find solutions where others couldn't, right? I don't know. That's just I just want to add a little bit of hopium into this rather negative talk, right? Anyway, we'll get back into this.
Economic indicators, social indicators. If we now turn to markets. Over the first few months of this year, financial market conditions have improved markedly. This is good for near-term growth, reducing the cost and increasing access to financing. But obviously we are concerned about the risk of an abrupt reversal of financial market conditions that could represent a material downside risk in the US.
AKA, they're really worried that the recession that she was saying earlier that, isn't coming. We got 2%, 2.6% growth. Let's be real why they aren't talking about that. And it's again because if they actually came out and said that, this recession's it's gonna happen, it'd happen right now, right? It would have happened on the 6th when she gave this speech because of how negative it would have been, right? So that's why she is and her panelists afterwards and answering questions are so timid when it comes to discussing the potential for recession, right? They stick to the talking point. No, 2.6% growth. It's good.
And in particular, a sudden tightening of financial conditions could interact adversely with the high level of private, public, corporate households and sovereign debt, and could create a feedback loop that would also weigh on real activity and job creations. Not to mention the fact that if that was to happen, it would not only have an impact in the US economy, but it would also have spillover effects beyond the borders of this country. Now let me say a few words about debt. We have highlighted in past consultation that the US public debt is on an unsustainable path. We believe that policy adjustments are needed in order to lower the fiscal deficit and to put public debt on a gradual downward path over the medium term. And there are, yet again, a range of possible options. However, in our view, any successful package will likely require steps to address the expected increases in entitlement spending on health and on social security. It would also include raising indirect taxation and instituting, as we have said many times before, a federal carbon tax. Turning to monetary policy. As you know, earlier this year, the Federal Reserve has indicated that it was pausing its process of raising interest rates. We fully agree with that approach and believe that this will give policymakers time to gauge the balance of risks to both inflation and employment outcome, and to build a clearer picture of whether further adjustments in the federal funds rates are warranted. Whatever the developments, we believe that it will be important for the Fed to continue to be exclusively data dependent and to continue to communicate well as it has on its assessment of the economic situation and its expectations for future monetary policy. Let me now close with something that is much talked about, and that has to do, obviously, with trade.
No, Madame Lagarde, you don't mean trade. You mean fintech, right? Fintech. Because that's really what we're about to talk about. But she's not going to say fintech. She's not going to say blockchain. Instead, listen to what she says instead, right?
We believe that for the global economy to actually function well, it needs to be able to rely on a more open, more stable, more transparent, more predictable, and rules-based international trade system.
Okay, so what is a more stable, transparent, fair, and global trade system that could potentially be in the works, especially when it's coming from the mouth of Christine Lagarde? But she's not talking about what that system is now, is she? Oh. Well, I mean, as an XRP investor who's sat here listening to Christine Lagarde talk enough over the past few months, I think it's pretty clear to me who she's talking about. Is it not clear to you? I'm sure it's clear to you because you're here listening to the XRP Martian Report about 20 minutes into a video so that you can learn that Christine Lagarde is now vocally stating, US, get your collective heads out your rears because this is coming, whether you like it or not. It's a good, we like that the Fed is holding off on their policy reform. You know, probably because she wants to wait until after G20 when the FATF, yeah. After the FATF is solidified, you know, and they decide exactly how this digital economy is going to be regulated, then we can go back to the Fed and we'll get some regulation on betting. But this is also, you know, this isn't just her making a statement. It's a warning to the United States because, mind you, what she was saying this whole time before, right? She's like, listen, yeah, the U.S. economy, sure, it's got all, you have all these great figures going on that you guys are talking about, but there's some real world issues going on here, some really serious problems that are, you know, beginning to transpire within your economy, and unless the U.S. government takes meaningful and profound steps to combat those conflicts that are coming in the very near future, you're going to be in trouble. And because if the U.S. fails, the rest of the world is going to feel that pain, that the spillover, as Christine Lagarde put it, right? Yeah, since that's going to happen, listen, we need to just move away from you as the primary monetary authority, right? And that's why we're going to move over to this more fair, transparent, global system that's more stable than the US dollar, or at least can be made more stable than the US dollar. That's the big takeaway here. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you found that informative, right? Well, nothing else is really said of super importance after this other than Christine Lagarde bidding adieu to the journalists and panelists, other people at this press conference, as she is leaving this press conference to hop a plane to Japan for the G20, right? So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please be sure to hit that like, and if you're not already, subscribe to me. And if you really enjoyed this kind of coverage, make sure you ring that bell. That way you can be kept up to date with any videos that I come out with later, right? So, as always, I've been Jade Martian. You've been watching the XRP Martian Report, and I hope to see you in my next video on Mars.